Imagine waking up on an ordinary Tuesday, having breakfast with your family, heading to the market to buy bread, arguing with your neighbor over the price of olive oil, and those being the last hours of your life. With no warning, with nobody knowing. That is exactly what more than 20,000 people experienced in Pompeii on August 24th, 79 AD. And what we are going to discover today, thanks to artificial intelligence and decades of archaeological research, is something that will completely change the image you have in your head of what that city looked like, because it was nothing like what they taught you in school. If you're new here, welcome. This channel exists to pull you out of the boredom of textbook history and take you straight to the heart of the civilizations that shaped our world. Hit like right now, subscribe and ring the bell, because the videos we have coming are going to be some of the most important ones you'll watch this year. And now, let's go to Pompeii. The first thing you need to understand is that Pompeii was not a small country town. It was a prosperous, cosmopolitan, chaotic, and vibrant city. It had around 11,000 permanent residents, but its floating population could easily double thanks to trade, tourism, and business arriving from across the entire Mediterranean. It was a port city, even though today the sea lies kilometers away, because the eruption of Vesuvius literally changed the geography of the area. In 79 AD, Pompeii had direct access to the sea through the Sarno River, and that made it a fundamental commercial hub for the entire Campania region. Now, what did that city actually look like? This is where most documentaries fail you, because they show you gray ruins, eroded stones, and empty spaces. The reality was completely different. Reconstructions generated by artificial intelligence, based on pigment analysis, preserved fresco fragments, and meticulous archaeological records, reveal a city of vivid colors that would strike us as almost overwhelming. The facades of houses were painted in vermilion red, ochre yellow, Egyptian blue, and deep green. There was not a single unpainted wall. The streets, though narrow and without artificial lighting at night, were during the day a visual spectacle of merchants, animals, carts, and citizens from every social class mixing together in an organized chaos that the Romans had turned into an art form. The streets of Pompeii are in themselves a marvel of urban engineering that was centuries ahead of its time. They had raised sidewalks, exactly like the ones we use today, so pedestrians did not have to walk through mud and waste. At intersections, there were large stones strategically placed, similar to a raised crosswalk, that allowed people to cross the street without getting their sandals dirty on rainy days. And that also worked as speed bumps for carts. The width of those stones was calculated with millimeter precision to match the spacing between the wheels of standard Roman vehicles. Does that sound familiar? Of course it does, because we are still doing the same thing today, without even realizing it. The marks left by cart wheels are still visible on the limestone pavement, deeply carved by centuries of use. Those marks tell us a silent story, that Pompeii was a place in constant motion, that traffic was a real problem, so much so that some streets had circulation restrictions depending on the time of day. Yes, the Romans invented traffic restrictions nearly 2,000 years before cars existed. And right here is where I want to pause for a moment to tell you something that could change the way you see money and success. Pompeii was rich, disproportionately rich for its size. And it was no coincidence. Civilizations like Rome had systems for creating and preserving wealth so sophisticated that economists still study them today. If you're interested in understanding how the great ancient civilizations built their prosperity, and above all what we can learn from those systems today, there's an ebook I recently discovered that I found genuinely eye-opening. It's called The Secrets of Wealth of Ancient Civilizations, and it's available at the link in the description. It costs just 10 euros, less than what you spend on coffee in a week. And on top of it, you're directly supporting this channel, so we can keep producing content like this. I truly recommend it. This is not empty advertising. It's material that perfectly complements what we're exploring today. Let's get back to Pompeii. Let's talk about the economy, because it's fascinating and almost nobody explains it properly. The city had more than 150 bars and restaurants, called thermopolia, which were establishments where hot food and drinks were sold at low cost. Archaeologists have found in them food remains that include duck, pork, sea snails, fish, and legumes. It was not luxury food. It was Roman fast food, the exact equivalent of a street taco or a burrito from the corner diner. but 2 millennia old. They even found in some thermopolia the remains of ingredients that were being prepared at the very moment of the eruption, as if the cook had left everything half-finished and run down. Pompeii's economy depended enormously on garum, a fermented fish sauce that for Romans was what soy sauce is for Asians today, or what chili is for Mexicans. It was the universal condiment, the umami of the ancient world. Pompeii had entire factories dedicated to producing it and exporting it across the entire Mediterranean basin. Amphorae of Pompeian garum have been found at archaeological sites from Spain to North Africa and the Middle East. It was a fully fledged global industry, managed from a city that on today's map would look like a minor town in southern Italy. But Pompeii's wealth did not come only from garum and trade. It also came from agriculture. The Vesuvius region, curiously, was incredibly fertile precisely because of previous volcanic eruptions, which had deposited layers of minerals into the soil. The area's vineyards produced wines that were exported under their own label, identified by seals on the amphorae indicating the harvest year, the producer, and the region. Something very similar to what we do today with protected designations of origin. The Romans of Pompeii did not just know how to make wine. They knew how to market it with a sophistication we would today call branding. Here I have to ask you something. Did you know all of this about Pompeii? Or did you have the image of a primitive city suddenly buried? Tell me in the comments what surprised you most about what you've seen so far. And let me know if you'd like us to make an exclusive video about the economy of the Roman Empire and how they created a wealth system that dominated the world for centuries. Your comments tell the algorithm that this content is worth watching and help us reach more people. Now let's talk about the days before the catastrophe, because there's something very few people know. The Pompeians had warning signs, multiple ones. Vesuvius had been showing signs of activity for years. 17 years earlier, in 62 AD, there was a devastating earthquake that severely damaged the city. Many buildings were still under reconstruction when the eruption of 79 hit. Wells had mysteriously dried up in the days before the catastrophe, a sign that magma was displacing the underground water tables. Animals were restless. Strange rumblings coming from the mountain were reported. The problem was that the Romans had no clear concept of what a volcano was. Vesuvius had been inactive for so many centuries that for them it was simply a mountain, green, fertile, and beautiful. Some historians mention that there were grapevines growing on the slopes of the crater. No one in Pompeii in 79 AD had any collective memory of a previous eruption. It was literally unthinkable. And there lies the great tragedy. They did not die out of ignorance. They died from a lack of information. They had the signs right in front of them, but lacked the conceptual framework to interpret them. The day of the eruption began like any other. It was August. It was hot. The market was busy. Gladiators were training in the amphitheater. Children were playing in the streets. Women were washing clothes at the public fountains, of which Pompeii had more than 40, supplied by its own aqueduct connected to the regional Roman water system. It was a city that never slept, buzzing with the energy of tens of thousands of people going about their daily lives. The eruption began around midday, though more recent research, based on carbon-14 analysis of organic remains found in the strata, suggests it could have happened in autumn, in October or November, and not in August as was believed for centuries based on Pliny the Younger's letter. This debate remains open in academic circles and is a reminder that the history we know is always subject to revision when new evidence appears. What we do know with certainty is that the eruption was extraordinarily violent. The column of volcanic material reached between 20 and 30 kilometers in height. To put that in perspective, commercial aircraft fly at around 10 kilometers altitude. It was a column of fire and rock that was 3 times the height of transatlantic flights. Ash began falling on Pompeii almost immediately, covering everything with a layer that at first looked like gray snow. Many residents thought it was manageable, something temporary, and stayed in their homes to wait it out. That was the fatal mistake for many of them. What they were not expecting were the pyroclastic currents, flows of superheated volcanic gas and solid particles that travel at speeds of between 100 and 700 kilometers per hour. With temperatures that can exceed 300 degrees Celsius. There is no outrunning them. There is no shelter that can withstand their passage. When the first pyroclastic current reached Pompeii, it killed instantly every living being in its path. The bodies remained perfectly positioned at the moment of death, frozen in time by the ash that solidified around them. The famous plaster casts of Pompeii's victims, which today we can see at the National Archaeological Museum of Naples and at the site itself, are actually the result of a technique developed by archaeologist Giuseppe Fiorelli in the 19th century. Fiorelli discovered that wherever there was an empty space in the compacted ash, there had frequently been an organic body that had decomposed over the centuries. By injecting liquid plaster into those spaces and waiting for it to solidify, he obtained exact three-dimensional replicas of the victims in their final positions, with details so precise that you can see facial expressions, the folds of clothing, even hair. It is one of the most ingenious forensic techniques in modern archaeology applied to first-century material. Among the victims found, there are stories that leave you speechless. A man was discovered holding a bag of gold coins in his hand, running when death caught him. An entire family embraced in a back room of their home, as if they had decided to die together rather than be separated. A gladiator found in the cell where he was locked up, with shackles still on his ankles. 18 people found in a cellar, perhaps hiding, perhaps waiting for the storm to pass. We will never know. But Pompeii teaches us something more, something that goes beyond individual tragedy. It teaches us that civilizations are fragile, that everything we build, our cities, our economic systems, our social networks, can disappear in hours. And at the same time, it teaches us that wealth, knowledge, and social organization are the only tools we have to face uncertainty. The Pompeians who survived were, for the most part, those who had the resources to move, the knowledge to interpret the signs in time, and the social networks that allowed them to escape with information and support. That connects directly to something I've been thinking about a lot lately, and that the e-book I mentioned earlier explores with incredible depth. The civilizations that endure are not those that accumulate wealth to spend it, but those that use it to build resilient systems, knowledge networks, and structures that outlast individuals. Rome did not fall in a day. It lasted centuries because it had built something greater than any emperor. And that way of thinking about wealth, how to create it, preserve it, and multiply it, is exactly what that material explores. 10 euros. Link in the description. Worth every cent. The story of Pompeii does not end in 79 AD. In a certain sense, that is when its most important story begins, because the city was perfectly preserved under meters of ash and pumice for more than 1700 years, until the first excavators rediscovered it in the 18th century. And what they found was something unprecedented in the history of archaeology. A Roman city from the 1st century almost completely intact, with its streets, its shops, its homes, its paintings, its wall inscriptions, its graffiti, its tiles, its water systems, its bread ovens still full of carbonized bread. Pompeii's graffiti deserves a chapter of its own. There are thousands of them, written directly on the walls of public and private buildings, and they reveal a completely human society in the best and worst sense. If you made it this far, you are exactly the kind of person we make this for. Tell me in the comments, which part of this story hit you hardest? The day of the eruption, the Roman economy, the graffiti, or the story of the man with a disability? I want to read your answers and reply personally to as many of you as I can. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the moment. Every subscription allows us to keep researching, keep producing, and keep bringing you stories like this one. See you in the next video.